There's a quiet movement happening right now, one that almost no one is talking about. The most awake, conscious, and psychologically developed people in our society are vanishing. Not with drama, not with noise, not in anger, but silently. They are deleting their social media accounts, stepping back from the chaos of constant connection, leaving behind careers that once defined them, walking away from friendships and relationships that once seemed permanent. They are disappearing, not into despair, but into solitude. Carl Jung foresaw this. He called it the necessary withdrawal, a stage in psychological development when the psyche simply cannot keep participating in the collective dream. And this withdrawal isn't a metaphorical idea. Jung said that for the deeply conscious individual, staying plugged into the collective becomes physically painful, not just irritating, somatically painful like touching something hot. This is why so many highly conscious people are quietly walking away from society right now. Not because they are broken, not because they are antisocial, but because the collective itself has become unbearable to their nervous system. The more awake a person becomes, the less they can tolerate the trance of normal society. And this withdrawal is not a failure. It is not spiritual bypassing. It is not escapism. It is the psyche's survival mechanism. When your consciousness has expanded beyond the collective dream, participating in that dream feels like betraying yourself every single day. You wake up in the morning, and every interaction requires you to put on a mask you can no longer wear. Every conversation asks you to pretend you don't know what you now know, and Jung understood this with terrifying clarity. Society runs on what he called the collective unconscious, the unspoken, shared dream of a group, shared beliefs, shared illusions, shared projections, and that system only functions if everyone stays asleep together. But when someone wakes up, really wakes up, they become a glitch in the matrix. Suddenly they can see the projections everyone else is living under. They can see the shadows people are throwing onto each other. They can see the hidden motives, the unconscious games, the lies people tell to keep the dream alive. And once you see this, you cannot unsee it. This is why so many of Jung's most developed patients began to withdraw from normal life, not because they were depressed, but because they could no longer bear the psychological cost of pretending to be asleep. Jung himself went through this. As his own consciousness deepened, ordinary social interaction became unbearable, not because he thought he was better than others, but because he was awake in a room full of people talking in their light. Every conversation required him to dim his awareness, to pretend he didn't see what was really happening beneath the surface. And that Jung called the curse of consciousness, because the more conscious you become, the more psychologically alone you feel. You may be surrounded by people, even people you love, but it feels like you are on a different planet. You are speaking a different language, breathing a different atmosphere, seeing dimensions that others can't see, and the energy it takes to bridge that gap becomes overwhelming. And so, quietly, gently as the awakened start to disappear, not from superiority, not because they hate the world, but because staying inside the collective dream requires them to betray the truth they've found. But here's where it gets even darker. Because as Jung discovered, the moment a person wakes up and begins to pull away from the collective dream, the collective does not quietly let them go. It fights back, not always with force, not always with violence, but with something far more disturbing, psychological retaliation. Jung called this the projection of the shadow. When you become more conscious, you begin to see things in people they cannot see in themselves. And instead of thanking you for seeing them clearly, most people will hate you for it. This is what I call the helper's paradox. The painful truth that the more you help people wake up, the more they resent you for it. You offer them light and they attack you. You give them insight and they call you dangerous. You tell them the truth and they exile you. Jung saw this over and over in his patients. He would help them uncover the unconscious patterns that were destroying their lives. And instead of feeling grateful, they would suddenly turn on him with hostility, fear, even hatred. It baffled him at first, but eventually he understood. When you show someone their shadow, you are not just giving them information. You are ripping apart their identity, because most people build their sense of self on repression, on not knowing the truth about who they are. And when you bring that truth into the light, it threatens the very structure of their personality. So their psyche does the only thing it can do to survive. It projects the shadow onto you. Suddenly, you become the villain. You become the one with bad motives. You become the danger. Jung called this enantiodromia, the sudden reversal where light becomes dark, friend becomes enemy, healer becomes persecutor. This is why so many empaths, healers, and awakened individuals find themselves scapegoated by the very people they tried to save. It's not because they did anything wrong. It's because their presence threatens the collective trance, and the collective will do anything to protect that trance, even sacrifice its most conscious members. This is the part that most spiritual teachers don't tell you. Waking up doesn't just make you free, it makes you dangerous. Not because you are a danger to others, but because you are a danger to the shared illusion that keeps everyone else asleep. And the more awake you become, the more hostility you may face, not just from strangers, but from family, friends, coworkers, even partners. People will accuse you of arrogance. They will call you negative. They will say you are too much, too intense, too dark. But what they are really saying is, you are showing me too much of myself and I can't handle it. Jung was ruthlessly honest about this. He said, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely, because accepting yourself completely means facing the parts of yourself you have spent your whole life avoiding. The rage, the envy, the desire, the fear, the weakness, the cruelty, the lust, and most people would rather project those things onto someone else than face them in themselves. This is why the most conscious people often become scapegoats, the carriers of everyone else's disowned darkness. They are turned into the villain in other people's stories, not because they are bad, but because they are the only one willing to hold the truth. And this, if you are living it, can be psychologically devastating. Because the more you wake up, the lonelier you may feel. The more you try to help, the more you may be rejected. And this is where many people falter. They think they are doing something wrong. They think they are cursed. They think they are too sensitive. But Jung would say, no, you are not cursed. You are awake, and this is the price of consciousness. Jung warned that the unconscious is not just personal, it is collective. This means that when you start pulling shadow material out of people, you are not just dealing with their individual darkness, you are dealing with the darkness of the entire group. And here is the truly frightening part. The collective shadow behaves like a living organism. It doesn't want to die. It doesn't want to be exposed. It will defend itself, just like an immune system fighting off an infection. And when you, the awakened individual, come along shining your light, you are treated like a pathogen. The system mobilizes against you. Suddenly gossip spreads. Suddenly people whisper. Suddenly the whole group seems to turn against you, as if possessed by the same mind. Jung saw this happen on a mass scale during the rise of fascism. He said that entire nations can become possessed by an archetype, swept up in a collective mania. But it also happens in small ways. Families, workplaces, and social groups. One person becomes the scapegoat, the target, the carrier of all the group's disowned pain, and they are expelled, sacrificed, so that the group can maintain its illusion of harmony. This is why being a helper can feel like being crucified. You take on everyone else's pain, and then you are the one who is nailed to the cross for it. But Jung insisted that this, too, is part of the path, because if you can withstand the pain of rejection, if you can hold your ground and not betray yourself, you emerge on the other side with something far more powerful than acceptance. You emerge with sovereignty. Sovereignty is the state where you are no longer ruled by the need for approval. You stop trying to save everyone. You stop trying to be liked. You stop trying to fit in, and instead, you choose to live your truth, fully, unapologetically, even if it means walking alone. This is the final stage of individuation, the birth of the self. At this stage, you no longer resent those who rejected you. You no longer try to convince them to see what you see. You no longer waste your energy trying to wake them up. You understand that everyone must face their shadow in their own time, and until they are ready, they will cling to their illusions, no matter how much it hurts them. This realization is both heartbreaking and liberating. Heartbreaking, because you must let go of your desire to save everyone. Liberating, because you are finally free to save yourself. Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And becoming who you truly are often means leaving behind the false roles you once played. The savior, the rescuer, the good one. You stop living for the collective and start living for the self. And paradoxically, it is only when you stop trying to help everyone that your very existence becomes the greatest help of all. Because you are no longer trying to pull people out of the water. You are simply standing on the shore, living proof that it is possible to swim. And when they are ready, they will find their own way to the shore. This is the paradox of the awakened life. You must be willing to be hated in order to truly love. You must be willing to be rejected in order to truly belong. You must be willing to be misunderstood in order to truly be seen. When you reach this point, the hostility of others no longer destroys you. It teaches you. You stop asking, "Why do they hate me?" And you start asking, "What in me still fears their hatred?" You become less reactive, less desperate, less hungry for validation, and you begin to walk with a quiet, unshakable strength. The strength of someone who has faced the darkness and come out whole. This is the gift of shadow work. Not that it makes you liked, but that it makes you real. And in a world addicted to illusion, to be real is the most radical act of all. Jung did not simply diagnose the problem. He offered a way through it. He knew that facing the shadow could break a person apart if they had no tools to contain the process. So he gave us a set of inner practices, what he called the technology of individuation. The first step, he said, is to learn the language of symbols, because the unconscious does not speak in plain words. It speaks in images, dreams, visions, slips of the tongue, strange coincidences. When you are hated for no reason, when you are scapegoated or attacked, it is not just an external event. It is a symbol. It is the unconscious acting itself out in the outer world. The question is not, why me? The question is, what is this trying to show me about myself? This is the turning point. Instead of projecting back, instead of fighting hate with hate, you turn inward and investigate your own depths. You sit with the pain. You notice the emotions it stirs up. You ask, where in me does this still hurt? Where in me do I still crave to be seen as good? Where in me do I still fear rejection? Jung said that every emotional reaction is a clue. It is like a trail of breadcrumbs leading you back to the wound that still needs healing. And this is where his most radical practice comes in. Active imagination. Active imagination is not about overthinking. It is about entering into dialogue with the unconscious. You close your eyes. You allow the images to rise. You let them speak. You ask the figures in your dreams, who are you? What do you want from me? And you listen, not with logic, but with your whole being. This process is not easy. Sometimes what rises is terrifying. Sometimes you see parts of yourself that you would rather deny. But Jung insisted, the gold is in the dark. If you run from the darkness, you run from the treasure. Each rejected part of you holds energy, creativity, vitality. When you reclaim it, you become more whole. And wholeness, Jung said, is the true goal of life, not happiness, not perfection. Wholeness. To be whole is to hold light and shadow together without splitting. To stand in the tension of opposites until a third thing emerges. Something larger, something new. This is why when others hate you, your task is not to prove them wrong. Your task is to integrate what they represent in you, even if they are unjust, even if they are cruel. You do not integrate their behavior. You integrate the part of you that is triggered by it. This is how you stop being at war with the world, because as long as you are split inside, you will keep meeting your shadow outside, in enemies, in rivals, in those who reject you. But when you integrate, something magical happens. The projections dissolve. You no longer see them as threats, you see them as mirrors. And from that place, your heart opens again. You no longer help others from a place of fear or superiority. You no longer help to prove you are good. You help because you are whole, and wholeness naturally overflows. This is what Jung meant by becoming a channel for the self, the higher organizing principle that lives within you. When the self takes over, you no longer force growth on others. You simply radiate your own truth, and those who are ready respond, and those who are not ready, you let them go. No anger, no bitterness, just trust, because you know that life will bring them their own teachers, their own initiations, their own opportunities to wake up. Your only job is to keep walking your own path, and as you walk, something else begins to shift. The hatred you once feared becomes a source of power. Each rejection burns away another layer of false identity. Each attack strips you of another mask, until finally you are left standing naked, but free. This is the final liberation, when even the collective shadow cannot sway you, when you no longer bend to its pressure, no longer silence your truth, no longer sacrifice your soul for belonging. This is what it means to be initiated by the shadow, not to defeat it, but to carry it with dignity. You become a living symbol of integration, a reminder to others that it is possible to walk through the fire and come out whole. And that, Jung believed, is the greatest gift you can give the world. Because when even one person becomes whole, it sends ripples through the collective. It opens a door, it lights a path, and sooner or later others will follow. The forest you started in, the one bathed in cinnamon red light full of twisted branches and curling mist, is still there, but something is different. The lone figure, once small and fragile, no longer glows just from the heart. Now the whole body radiates, faintly at first, then fiercely, like a furnace lit from the inside. This is what happens when you integrate the shadow. The very thing that once threatened to destroy you becomes your fuel. Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. You have made it conscious. You have stepped out of fate and into freedom. The branches that once looked like claws now look like open hands, as if the forest itself is bowing to your transformation. The mist clears. The path ahead is visible for the first time. And here is the paradox. You still stand alone, but you no longer feel alone. Because you have met the only companion that truly matters, your own soul. This is the moment where most people want the story to end on a perfect note. But Jung warned that individuation is not a one-time event. It is a lifelong process. The shadow will return. The collective will project again. You will be tested, but now you have the tools. You know how to listen. You know how to turn inward instead of outward. You know that every enemy is a disguised messenger. Every rejection, a hidden invitation. This is why Jung called those who commit to this path secret carriers of the light. Because you are no longer at war with darkness, you carry it consciously. And in doing so, you make it less dangerous for everyone around you. And here is where the story becomes bigger than you. When you refuse to be broken by the world's projections, you are not just saving yourself, you are creating space for others to do the same. Your life becomes a kind of silent permission slip, a signal to those who are still trapped in the drama, still hiding from their pain, still searching for a scapegoat. There is another way. You stop arguing with people who misunderstand you. You stop justifying yourself to those who resent you. You stop wasting energy trying to save people who don't want to be saved. Instead, you become the kind of person whose very presence feels like a door opening. And when those who are ready finally come, bruised, broken, hungry for truth, you will not give them cheap positivity. You will not promise them a shortcut. You will guide them into the forest, because you know that is where the treasure lies. This is why Jung's work is not for the faint of heart. It is for those willing to risk everything, reputation, comfort, certainty, in order to meet their true self. And that is the invitation you now hold in your hands. So if you have been feeling hated, rejected, misunderstood, take a breath. You are not cursed. You are being initiated. The fire you are walking through is forging something in you that cannot be forged any other way. Let the branches scrape you. Let the mist blind you for a while. Let the loneliness teach you what cannot be taught in a crowd. Because when you emerge, and you will emerge, you will not just be healed. You will be transformed, and that transformation will ripple outward, quietly, powerfully, invisibly changing the field for everyone who comes after you. This is how collective evolution happens, not through mass movements or loud revolutions, but through individual souls who dare to go all the way in. You are one of them now. Walk on. Cinematic closing scene. Prompt for final image video frame. Surreal forest bathed in deep cinnamon red light. Mist now parted, revealing a clear glowing path. Lone figure standing at the edge of the forest, radiating full body light. Branches no longer threatening but arching like a cathedral over the path. Dreamlike spiritual atmosphere. Soft golden sparks floating in the air. Cinematic depth and epic scale. Scene definition. This closing scene represents liberation. The figure is no longer lost, but standing at the threshold of a new journey. Having absorbed the shadow and emerged whole, it visually communicates transcendence, resolution, and hope, leaving viewers with a sense of completion and empowerment.